Welcome back to Season 3 of Altea Talks, the podcast from Altea, where we bring real-world insights for professionals working in the medical, allied health and care sectors, and for those who work alongside them. I'm your host, Will Marshall, and this season I'll be chatting with some truly exceptional guests, recognised leaders who are shaping thinking at the very top of their respective fields. Together, we'll have open, entertaining and informed conversations as we try to get to the heart of the biggest challenges and emerging issues shaping health and social care today, delivering the expert thinking, insights and thought leadership that you need to stay ahead. So if you're looking for frontline knowledge and expertise, if you want valued insights into these most dynamic, challenging and rewarding of sectors, then look no further, because you're in the right place. Welcome again to Altea Talks. Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Altea Talks. I'm delighted today to be joined by Steve Johnson of Holistic Insurance. Steve describes himself as the original specialist insurer for professional talking therapies. Over the course of his long and distinguished career in insurance, Steve has worked closely with the psychological professions, counsellors, psychotherapists, and the coaching profession, providing professional liability insurance services. Steve's firm belief is that professionals buy liability insurance based on trust. That's trust that their insurance provider understands their professional sector and will stand side by side with them in their time of need, with a good understanding of the issues that are likely to be causing the problem. Steve has 38 years' experience of working in this sector. Over that time, he has helped and supported countless colleagues and clients, supporting those when things have gone wrong or are alleged to have gone wrong, or even when they might go wrong if the right choice is not made when faced with an ethical dilemma. People often say that Steve has a way of putting things into perspective and is able to calm down what can be a fraught and distressing time. I'm delighted to say that Altea will be joining forces with Steve and Holistic Insurance in providing bespoke insurance to the talking therapies sector. We're very excited to be launching this scheme early in 2026, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have this opportunity to sit down with Steve and talk through all things talking therapies insurance. Steve, a very warm welcome to Altea Talks.
Thank you, Will. Delighted to be here.
Well, thank you, Steve. And perhaps we could start off then to just sort of tell the viewers and the listeners about what the new scheme will entail.
Yeah, I'd actually retired from this field just a little bit over 18 months ago. And I was approached by Holistic Insurance saying that they were interested in working with psychologists, which is something that they'd never done before. They've insured talking therapists, counsellors and psychotherapists since about 2008, but steered clear of psychologists because they didn't have an understanding of that particular professional sector. They knew that I had a deep experience in that field. In fact, I launched my first scheme for psychologists on the 1st of January 1988, so indeed 38 years ago. When Holistic found that I had retired, they approached me to see if I would be prepared to do some consultancy work with them. And I've known of Holistic for 15 or so years and been aware of them as a significant competitor and an important player in the market. So I was delighted to be approached and was very happy to join them. We've worked together for the last 12 months, along with you, Will, and your colleagues, to develop this latest facility. And I'm very happy that it's on the verge of being launched early next year.
Yeah, thank you. Exciting times, and we're very much looking forward to working with you and your colleagues at Holistic Insurance as well. I think maybe if we could sort of take it a step back, and if you could, well, my question, I suppose, is how would you best explain to talking therapists why indemnity insurance is needed and what it actually covers them for, and I guess what it doesn't cover them for?
Yeah. Okay. Basically, as a talking therapist, you need to have a specialist liability insurance. It needs to be from an insurer that understands your profession, because you need to know that there will be somebody there that understands your profession and the things that can go wrong. So it's important that you buy your insurance from a specialist. There are several specialists out there. Holistic are not the only one, but it's important that you choose a specialist and then you decide which specialist is going to be best for you. And you can only do that using your own judgment. The idea of professional liability insurance, sometimes called professional indemnity insurance, is to protect you against claims that might be made against you in your professional capacity. So in case you get something wrong with a client that causes the client harm or damage in some way, or there's an allegation that harm or damage has been caused due to something that you've done. As a talking professional, you almost certainly won't give people advice. It's more a question of allowing people to form their own decisions going forward. That's what therapy is all about. It's not about giving advice. But your clients might not always see it that way. They will often think that you've given them advice. And if that advice, as they see it, turns out to be wrong, then they might come back to you or against you with a claim for damages as a result of the consequences of that action. In terms of, how do you decide how much you need to be insured for, what limit of indemnity to go for? You need to think about the type of clients that you might be working with. So if you're focusing your work on what we might call high-profile individuals, that could be high-flying executives, city executives, it could be professional sports people, then you need to be sure that you've got a limit of indemnity that matches the potential claim that might arise from that sector. And the reason you need to differentiate at that kind of level is think about a loss of earnings claim. So if there's an allegation that the work that you've done with a client has caused them to need to take time off work, then they might look to you for their loss of earnings. Now imagine you've got Lewis Hamilton, say, as a client, and he makes an allegation that the work that you've done with him as a psychologist or a counsellor has caused him to have a loss of confidence, so that he can no longer drive his car at hundreds of miles an hour and win races. No, he's not been doing that lately anyway. Anyway, that's a sidetrack. But imagine there's a loss of earnings claim from a client like Lewis Hamilton. That's going to be significant. So you need to make sure that your limit of indemnity, the amount that you're insured for, is going to be equal to any potential claim that might arise.
Yeah, thank you. And what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've encountered among your clients about indemnity or liability insurance?
Okay, all insurance policies have exclusions, and there's no insurance policy out there that will cover you for every eventuality. Most of the insurances that are available in the specialist sector will provide you with cover for everything that you need. But again, they will only go so far. So most of the policies in this sector will have what's commonly called a deliberate acts exclusion. So if you do something that you know is wrong and is likely to cause harm or damage to your client, then you can't expect your insurers to cover that. So, for example, getting involved with a client as a friend or in a sexual relationship is something that we all know, you all know that you shouldn't do. You can't expect your insurers to deal with the consequences of that.
Yeah, thank you. You've spoken about the importance of specialism and of having an insurer who understands the sector, understands the profession that they're working with, such as yourself. What are some of the sort of specific add-ons or policy extensions, to use the jargon, that you tend to recommend to your psychologist and talking therapist clients?
Yeah, so it's not a question of adding things on to the policy. You need to look for a policy that's got the majority of things that you're going to need covered as standard. And that might be things like a policy that covers you for accidental breach of confidentiality, something that covers you for a loss of documents, losing your client records in case that you might leave your briefcase on a train and your client notes get into the wrong hands, you need to know that that's going to be covered by your insurance.
We've also seen it in sort of in a legal context. Therapists and psychologists and so on can quite often find themselves being involved in an application to the court for release of confidential records about a patient, not because they've done anything wrong, but just because in the course of proceedings relating to that patient, that application is made. So some policies, including the new one from Holistic, will include a section which would help you put forward a challenge to the court if you believe it's not in your client's best interests for their notes and records to be released. So if you think that it's very important that your client records remain confidential, maybe even despite your client's wishes to the contrary, then the insurers will allow you to put forward a challenge and pay the legal representation to support that challenge. Yeah, it's a good example, I think, of the policy being really bespoke for the sector.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, and just on the one issue which I know crops up a lot in insurance, not just for the talking therapists, but across the health and care sectors, is that obviously not all of us work alone. We don't work in our own little silo. I just wondered if you could explain what some of the insurance issues are really for therapists who supervise others or who work with subcontractors or non-employed colleagues within a practice. I mean, what sort of additional risks does their insurance need to cover?
Okay, so if you are involved in the supervision of others or indeed training others to become therapists, counsellors, psychologists, you need to make sure that your insurers understand that, because that's not necessarily a standard part of the cover. So obviously your involvement with another therapist as their supervisor brings additional responsibilities because you are taking on, if you like, a responsibility for their work as well. So you need to know that your insurer will provide you with cover in those circumstances. Most of the specialist insurers will provide that cover, but you can't take it for granted. You need to check.
Yeah, sure. Can I just move it on to talk a little bit about claims?
Yes.
Just to start us off, when claims come in against talking therapists, what are the most common themes or allegations that you've tended to see in the course of your career?
Many and varied. I've seen just about every possible situation that could give rise to a claim. The common areas tend to be boundary breaches, improper endings, lack of or unclear contracting with your clients, managing or not managing your clients' expectations can often be a problem area. With talking therapies, you need to recognise, your clients need to recognise that they're embarking upon a journey and things can sometimes get worse before they start to get better. If you don't tell your clients that in advance, then when things take a downward spiral, they might quit at that stage thinking that things are going wrong. If they're prepared, if you've told them that sometimes things can get worse and then they will start to get better, then they're prepared for that and they will understand that that's how it works.
Yeah, sure. Can you share an anonymised real-world example of a claim and explain perhaps how you as the insurer supported the therapist through it?
Yeah, the one I've got in mind is a very good example as to why it's important to have very clear contracting with your clients as well. So we had a client, a counsellor, who it was in the run-up to Christmas, actually, and I think it might have been Christmas Eve, actually. The client was due to turn up at the consulting rooms at 12 o'clock. It got to 12:15 and the client hadn't arrived. So the therapist phoned the client and said, where are you? Are you on your way? And he said, oh, no, I've forgotten. I'm I'm a man. I've left my Christmas shopping until the last minute. I'm on the high street. Well, said the counsellor, if you're on the high street, you're only 5 minutes away. Why don't you come round now and we'll finish the session? He said, no, I really need to get this shopping done. I'm in that frame of mind. Okay. You realise then that you'll need to forfeit your fee for the session because you've not given me any notice of cancellation. Now, this therapist's practice was to always take payment for one session in advance. I'm not saying that's what everybody should do, but this particular therapist had done that. So she said to the client, you realise you're going to have to forfeit the fee? He said, yeah, okay, my mistake. I accept that. I do need a session, though, as soon as you can after Christmas. Can you book me in on your first available slot after Christmas? The therapist looked in her diary and said, actually, my first working day back after Christmas, I've got a slot available at 10 o'clock. Is that okay for you? Shall I book you in for that? He said, yeah, that'd be great. She said, okay, I'll need to take your payment details because, as you know, I take payment for one session in advance. Oh, okay, just hang on a second. So he got his card out and gave her the details. Got to the first working day after Christmas. The therapist has a phone call from the client. I'm really sorry, but I'd forgotten. I've got a hospital appointment today and I can't make the session. Okay, no problem. But you realise you're going to have to forfeit your fee for this session as well. Client wasn't happy at all at that stage. Shouted and swore a little bit and put the phone down, having threatened first to make a complaint to the professional body. The professional body approached the therapist a week or so later and said, indeed, they had received a complaint from this particular client. The therapist approached me and said, what do I do? We've got this complaint. She explained the circumstances. I said, okay, so you've got this position set out in your contract that if they need to cancel the appointment, they need to give you how many hours notice? 48, she said. Okay, fine. So the complaint to the professional body stated that the client had given the therapist all the notice he could because the session that he had to cancel after Christmas was her first working day back. The therapist said to me, but I've got this additional clause in my contract that says if the 48-hour notice period happens to coincide with a non-working day or days, then if you ring this number and leave a message, that will count as you giving 48 hours notice. Okay, so we were able to point this out to the professional body, who said, absolutely fine. The complaint must be withdrawn. It can't proceed. You've done exactly the right thing. You've set out your terms and conditions very clearly in a contract. Your client has signed the contract. You've done nothing wrong. So I was very happy to help the client the therapist get through that situation.
It's a really good example, I think, because it also highlights the importance of documentation as well.
Absolutely, it does.
And of the contract, because with that clear contractual position set out, the client was able to satisfy the regulatory body that she had essentially done everything that she should have done.
Absolutely, yeah. This therapist was very switched on from a business point of view. I have to say that not all therapists are. Most of them are focused on their helping the client, but it's important that as a therapist in private practice, you are actually in business and you need to set your stall out properly in order to help you to run that business efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the other thing I'd pick up on that is that the complaint didn't relate to a clinical error or an error in the performance of her professional conduct, if you like.
Indeed.
How often, in your experience, do claims relate to issues other than professional errors, such as you've given the example there of not understanding the contract, but other things that you hear about are things like ruptures in the therapeutic relationship or just misunderstandings?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very easy. Broken boundaries, as I said before, is a common cause of complaints. So it's important that as a therapist, you realise that this is a professional working relationship with your client. It's not a friendship. If it starts to turn into a friendship, then the boundaries get blurred and your client can quite easily become confused. Another example, I won't go into too many details, but it was a therapist who was working from home, and the client would often stay behind at the end of the session and have chats with the therapist and the therapist's partner, who also worked from home, not as a therapist, but as something else. And the partner would get involved in chats with the client. Now, that's not a therapeutic relationship. You don't go and visit your GP or your dentist and stay behind and have a chat with them. You're in there for your treatment and then you're out. That's exactly how it should be with therapy.
That example also, I had a question around that actually, which is how claims can unfold, or sort of potential claims unfold in situations involving a number of different stakeholders, whether that's couples counselling or working with families or with vulnerable adults or children, where safeguarding agencies become involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple counselling is a very specialist area, and you all know as therapists that you should only get involved in working with couples if you've had specific training in that area, and similarly with children. But couples counselling in particular can be very difficult, particularly where there are disputes between the couples, and that's often what the therapy is all about anyway. So it's very easy to see how that could lead to a conflict of interest. So if one of the couples thinks that you're supporting them in favour against the other one, then that can be problematic.
Yeah, sure. In terms of risk, in your experience, are there certain sort of client presentations, such as, I don't know, those presenting with more complex trauma or personality difficulties? Are there presentations that are associated with higher rates of claims or complaints?
Yeah, one particular case I can remember, a client was presenting with multiple personality disorder. Sorry, we shouldn't call it that now. It's dissociative identity disorder,
okay,
I think is the correct current term. But this client was presenting with different personalities, and the therapist would never know which one was going to turn up. One time, the client turned up as a teenage girl, and one of the issues she wanted to talk about was that she was being groomed by the people that she lived with for prostitution. And the therapist went into great detail discussing this with the client and got very involved in the discussion. This is a very experienced therapist with many years' knowledge and experience of working with this particular type of clients. Sometime after, there was a complaint from the professional body about the therapist, alleging that the therapist had in fact been grooming this client for prostitution. Now, this is a phenomenon that will be familiar to you as therapists, known as transference. So the problem that the client had been experiencing somewhere else had been transferred onto the therapist, and the therapist had become blamed for that particular set of circumstances. We were able to work with the therapist and give very specific details of the therapy and explain that this was a transference issue, and it was recognised that was in fact the case, and the complaint was dismissed. But it was a very difficult complaint to deal with, very traumatic for the therapist as well.
I can imagine, yeah. Can I just ask you about the NHS and the NHS against sort of versus private practice, really? Can you just start by explaining how insurance differs for therapists working in the NHS compared to those in private practice or with a blended portfolio?
Okay, let's talk about psychologists working for the NHS in particular. Sure. So as a psychologist, if you're working wholly within the NHS, so you're not doing any private work, you should be covered by something that's called NHS indemnity. So any claim arising from the work that you do with your clients within the NHS should be covered by NHS indemnity. So if that's the case, why do you need insurance? Well, there are some things that are not covered by NHS indemnity, and the primary reason for concern among psychologists who are employed by the NHS should be if a complaint is made about you as a psychologist, even working within the NHS, to the Health and Care Professions Council, or HPC, then the NHS, the trust that you're working for, will not necessarily represent you at the HCPC disciplinary hearing. So you need insurance to provide you with that important cover, because representing yourself at an HCPC disciplinary hearing can be very costly, very time-consuming, and is not something that you want to embark upon without specialist help.
Yeah, because the CNST cover, the state-backed indemnity that you were talking about, it provides cover for compensation claims, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's all the sort of additional areas which may fall between the cracks. And that's why you need to have the insurance cover. Yeah.
Now, the new policy that we Holistic are arranging with Altea includes specific cover for psychologists who are wholly employed within the NHS to provide them with the Health and Care Professions Council disciplinary hearings cover.
Yeah.
And that will be available at a discounted rate to recognise that you don't actually need the rest of the cover, because you don't need a policy that provides you with cover for compensation claims, because that's going to be dealt with by the NHS.
Yeah, thank you. It's very clear. Can I just ask you about a sort of, I suppose you'd call it a phenomenon really in healthcare generally, but it seems to me particularly in the talking therapies sphere, which is really the explosion post-pandemic in online and remote treatment, and particularly online and remote therapy. And I just would be interested to hear your view about how that has affected the nature of claims and the nature of the risks that the professionals face by delivering their care, their services in that way, including working actually with overseas patients as well, and the sorts of risks that they should ensure their insurance covers.
Okay. So, as you say, Will, working from home, working remotely with clients rather than seeing them face-to-face is becoming more and more commonplace. And all of the specialist insurers out there in this field will provide cover for working with clients remotely. It's important, however, that you establish where your clients are going to be based. Let's assume that you, as a therapist, will be based in the UK, because we're dealing with UK-based therapists in the main here. Given that your clients could be literally anywhere in the world, you need to check with your insurer, even if it's a specialist insurer, you need to check whether you are covered to work with clients in particular territories. Some policies, for example, will provide you with cover to work with clients anywhere in the world other than clients in North America. Some policies will provide you with cover to work with clients in North America, but won't provide you with cover for any claims that might be brought against you in North America. So we're talking about jurisdiction in legalistic terms, within the policy wording. So where does the policy provide you with cover for claims that will be made against you? So I would suggest that if you are working with clients that are based abroad, if your policy provides you with cover to do that, you should in any event have a clause within your contract which states that your contract and the work to which it relates are subject to the jurisdiction of the laws of England and Wales or Scotland or whichever part of the UK you're based in, because that makes it easier for you if you have a claim made against you, because you're defending it in a region or jurisdiction that's familiar to you, but it also ensures that it's more likely to be covered by your insurer, because most insurers will have a UK jurisdiction clause within their policy. It's important that you check and that you get an understanding as to what particular requirements your insurers have and what exclusions they have, and that you understand and accept those exclusions.
Yeah, so it's a good point you make about the having the sort of the contractual agreement with the patient.
Yes.
About that, because of course the patient isn't a party to the insurance contract. So the therapist may be able to say, yeah, but that's a requirement of my insurance. But that wouldn't necessarily, well, it may not be accepted by a foreign jurisdiction.
Indeed.
if a claim is brought there. And B, the patient may well say, well, that's not a concern of mine because I'm not a party to that contract. Yeah.
Having said that, any legal advisor that's advising a client on bringing a claim against you as a therapist will look at the contract between you and the client. And if they see that there is a UK jurisdiction clause in there, if they've got any sense, they will look at bringing the claim within the UK, because they will almost certainly tie that back to an insurance requirement. So they will know that if they bring the claim, say, in North America, it's likely that it won't be backed by insurance, and therefore they're not going to get any compensation, even if the claim is successful.
Yeah.
Because there'll be no insurance to fund it.
Yeah. I mean, as you said at the top of your answer, really, if you are working with patients overseas, it is important to have that dialogue with your insurer.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Just to be clear up front.
Yep.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, sort of really based on your long experience in the field, whether there's something that you wish every therapist knew before they ever purchased an insurance policy?
That's a good question. My advice is that you need to be comfortable with your insurance provider. So don't just ring the first one and take their policy, even if it's the cheapest available. Ring round, form an impression of the company that you're dealing with. Ask them some questions, some tricky questions, maybe something that I've talked about in this session, and see what answers you get, and make your judgment based on that experience.
Thank you. And just whilst I've got you in sort of crystal ball mode, what are the emerging risk trends that you're seeing in the talking therapists and psychologists field at the moment?
Okay. One of my major concerns is AI, or artificial intelligence, and people are looking towards AI, ChatGPT, for example, to solve their problems rather than going to visit a therapist. Now, artificial intelligence isn't new, although it wasn't called that back in the day. I remember back in the mid-1980s having a BBC Basic computer, and there used to be a magazine that came out on a monthly basis, I think, and it had programs that you could type in to your BBC Basic machine. And one of those programs I remember very well was a therapy program. So the program imitated a therapist, and you would type in a question as though you were a client, and then the program would come back with a response. Now, it was literally very basic and nothing like the artificial intelligence programs of today, but I think that's where it all started, and it's obviously developed from there. One of my main concerns with AI is that one of the major benefits of the therapeutic relationship is the interaction between two human beings, and you can't replace that with a machine, however clever the machine might pretend to be.
Yeah, and I mean, do you feel as well that the increase in remote treatment and online treatment has that also got risks of undermining that human interaction that you're talking about?
To some extent, it has, but you get more interaction, more human interaction with a therapist on a screen than you do with a artificial intelligence program on a screen in front of you. So you can still get that, albeit limited, human interaction. Face-to-face, in my view, is better, but we have to accept that remote working is going to become more and more common. But as long as you still have that human interaction, I think all is not lost.
Yeah, maybe if there'd been more remote working at the time of the example you gave about the guy who kept cancelling his session, maybe
Indeed.
he would have been able to attend one of them.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And I think we'll sort of draw it to a close. But in doing that, if you could give therapists three, I always like the number three, but
Yeah.
3 practical tips to better protect themselves and their clients, what would those tips be?
Okay. Clear contracting, manage your clients' expectations, and have boundaries in place.
Okay, very clear. Thank you. We've talked about contracting, managing your clients' expectations. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I did touch on that earlier. So counselling is a journey, therapy is a journey. Things can get worse before they get better. But also, you can never guarantee as a therapist to cure anybody's problems. All you can do is work with them to help them find their own solutions and their own conclusions. And because that rather puts it in their hands, you cannot guarantee that you will be successful in every case.
And maintaining boundaries, you've talked about that a bit as well, but maybe just expand on that.
Yeah, that's also very important to recognise that, as I said before, therapy is not a friendship, it's a professional relationship, and you must always maintain those boundaries. Don't allow your clients to push and stretch those boundaries, because that's when things can start to break down and start to go wrong.
Yes, thank you. Well, those are very helpful, clear tips. Thank you very much. And it just remains for me to thank you again, Steve, for coming on Altair Talks and for providing so much interesting and thought-provoking content for this fascinating area. And on a personal note, just to say how much all of us at Altair are really looking forward to working with you on this exciting new venture.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Altair Talks. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, as this helps spread the word. If you have any questions or comments or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, please do contact us, as we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on LinkedIn or visit our website at www.altairinsurance.com. Stay tuned for more episodes, and until next time, take care of yourselves. The information contained in this podcast is not intended to represent a complete analysis of the topics presented and is provided for information purposes only for practitioners in the UK. It is not intended as legal or insurance advice, and no responsibility can be accepted by Altair or Holistic Insurance for any reliance placed upon it. Independent legal advice should always be obtained before applying any information to particular circumstances.